The Galactic Council chamber shimmered with light from 1,000 species gathered to decide Earth's fate. Above the curved hall floated the holographic projection of the planet, blue, fragile, suspended in judgment. The air trembled with murmurs as the presiding arbiter called for silence. Humanity's ambassador stood at the center, his uniform stripped of insignia, his expression unreadable. He had traveled across 10 sectors to defend his people, but he could already see the outcome in their eyes. The verdict had been decided long before he arrived. The arbiter's voice boomed through the chamber, resonant and final. By order of the Galactic Council, Earth stands accused of repeated violations of interstellar law, aggression toward member species, and refusal to conform to galactic norms of conduct. The words echoed like a sentence from a god. The human remained still, his eyes scanning the delegates. Behind every alien face he saw fear, not of guilt or harm, but of potential, humanity's potential. The universe had watched a death-world species rise from gravity wells and toxic skies to stand beside civilizations millions of years older. And that terrified them. When the ambassador spoke, his voice carried no anger. You call it aggression. We call it survival. Every species here was born into comfort. We were born into war, plague, famine, and fire. We endured because we had no choice. You mistake instinct for hostility. The translator drones hummed as his words rippled across languages. The council chambers erupted in murmurs of disapproval. A scaled delegate from the Threx Dominion hissed. You conquered 3 neutral systems in self-defense. You tested weapons banned by the Accords. You humans expand without restraint. Another, a winged member of the Vir Conclave, added sharply. You are a contagion that spreads through necessity. You cannot coexist without consuming. The human nodded slightly. Perhaps. But exile us, and you will regret forcing us back into isolation. His words hung in the air, unsettling even the most confident voices. The arbiter struck his staff against the platform. Enough. The council will now vote. Beams of light illuminated the ceiling as each delegate cast their will. Green for mercy, red for exile. The chamber filled with crimson. Worlds that once traded with Earth, once celebrated humanity's innovation, turned away. Out of the thousands present, only 6 lights remained green. The verdict was beyond appeal. The arbiter's tone turned solemn. By overwhelming majority, the species known as humanity is hereby exiled from all galactic space. Their vessels, colonies, and ambassadors are to withdraw within 1 cycle. Failure to comply will result in eradication under Article 42. The human closed his eyes for a long moment, exhaling through his nose. No visible emotion, no outburst. Just silence. He looked up at the vast assembly, and spoke his final words with terrifying calm. Then we will go. You will not need to ask twice. The chamber fell silent. Even the translation drones paused as though stunned by the simplicity of his statement. The delegates exchanged uncertain glances. The arbiter dismissed him, calling for the next matter on the agenda as if exiling an entire species were routine. The human turned and walked the long path to the exit, his footsteps echoing through the hall. Cameras from 100 networks broadcast his departure across the stars. On Earth, billions watched in silence. Some wept. Some clenched their fists. None pleaded. Across colonies, fleets, and stations, orders were transmitted: withdraw. Shut down. Prepare. The Galactic Council mistook their obedience for defeat. Outside the Council's orbiting spire, the human ambassador looked once more toward the window where the galaxy sprawled before him. Brilliant, endless, and now forbidden. They think they've cast us out, he murmured to his aide. But all they've done is remove their leash. His transport departed, engines igniting like twin suns against the void. The council chambers returned to normal debate within the hour, already forgetting the small world they had banished. Yet, in that moment of dismissal, the galaxy had made a single, irreversible mistake. Humanity, when denied a place, never begged for one, they built a new one. And though the council believed exile would contain Earth's reach, they had instead opened the gates to something they could no longer control. The countdown to their own reckoning had quietly begun. The years that followed were not marked by rebellion but by learning. Humans, scattered across thousands of alien worlds, became the quiet machinery behind a galaxy that believed them broken. They built, repaired, and innovated in silence. They watched, listened, and adapted. Where other species relied on inherited knowledge, humans absorbed everything. They memorized starship schematics, translated encrypted codes, and understood alien systems better than their creators. Every task assigned to humiliate became a lesson. Every command barked in arrogance was stored and studied. Humanity was evolving, not dying. In the forges of the Empyreans, human workers found that the overseers never questioned efficiency. Machines were modified under the guise of repairs, producing alloys stronger and lighter than the originals. The aliens praised their productivity, blind to the hidden messages etched into the metal frames. On agricultural moons, human laborers altered soil composition and hid caches of nutrients that could sustain them for decades. On mining worlds, they adjusted power grids to create secret communication currents, invisible to the scanners that searched for rebellion. The galaxy had given them tools and resources. Humanity simply learned to use them better. A coded network emerged without a single meeting or leader. The system was self-born, spreading through whispers, markings, and subtle cues. A single pattern of dots carved into a wall could mean a safe worker's quarter, while a repeated hum during work shifts meant an open channel nearby. The overseers ignored these oddities, thinking them cultural habits of a defeated species. Yet through them, information moved faster than any sanctioned communication. A map of hidden human populations began to form, every colony, every factory, every station connected by signals of defiance wrapped in ordinary labor. The first silent victories came quietly. A freighter disappeared into a nebula after a human pilot miscalculated its jump vector. An orbital refinery erupted when a fuel valve, supposedly inspected, failed precisely when an inspection drone approached. The incidents were scattered and untraceable. Alien authorities dismissed them as accidents. But among humans, each accident carried meaning. It was proof that the impossible could be done. Meanwhile, generations of humans raised in captivity learned not fear, but focus. They had no nations or flags left to divide them. The concept of Earth had become mythic, something sacred and unifying. In their stories, Earth was not the world they lost, it was the home they would reclaim. The words Echo Protocol began circulating within the hidden channels. No one knew where it originated. Some believed it came from the remnants of the old Terran military, others from scientists who had escaped execution. Its promise was simple: when the signal came, humanity would rise together. Human intellect began outpacing the very species that enslaved them. They solved mechanical problems that alien engineers struggled with for decades. They invented techniques for faster production, optimized trade routes, and recalibrated reactors for efficiency. Aliens called it slave ingenuity, unaware they were training their future executioners. The Council rewarded colonies with more human labor, spreading the seeds of their own downfall further. On a distant moon, a human overseer gazed at the holographic feed of alien fleets, noting how communication relays overlapped. He adjusted a frequency generator subtly, creating a blind spot large enough for a fleet to hide. No one noticed. Across another system, a human technician quietly rerouted data packets through encrypted loops, forming the backbone of what would become the first human-controlled network in centuries. The galaxy saw servitude, humans saw strategy. Chains were tools, and humiliation was camouflage. The more the aliens flaunted their control, the more humanity learned how fragile that control truly was. They had turned labor into espionage, submission into preparation. By the time the Council began investigating the growing number of unexplained losses, humanity was already everywhere, embedded in the heart of every empire, fluent in every code, invisible in every shadow. Their voices spoke in the pulse of machines and the hum of reactors. The day of open defiance had not come yet, but every heartbeat carried the same vow: we endure. We learn. We are coming back. The day it began, there were no speeches or banners. Just a silence spreading through the stars like the calm before a storm. Across thousands of worlds, human workers moved as usual, speaking the same obedient words they had spoken for generations. Yet, beneath that routine, every glance and motion carried purpose. At the same instant, across the network humanity had woven through hidden channels, a code was triggered, simple, elegant, irreversible. Machines that had obeyed for centuries turned against their masters in the span of a heartbeat. A freighter orbiting the Veth core worlds exploded mid-transfer, its energy reactors detonating in perfect synchronization with another ship half a galaxy away. Orbital foundries malfunctioned simultaneously, spewing molten metal across dockyards filled with alien engineers. The Council called it sabotage. They were right, but far too late to matter. Within hours, communications across 12 sectors collapsed. Supply chains vanished. Fleets went dark. What the aliens did not yet understand was that every relay, every system, every command line relied on human hands. And those hands had finally let go. The uprising did not roar, it whispered. No war drums, no battle cries, only quiet precision. Human pilots locked their alien commanders in sealed compartments before redirecting warships toward uninhabited space. Engineers sabotaged reactors by altering temperature limits buried in deep system code. Dockyard workers rerouted control nodes to human frequencies. Each strike was coordinated through the hidden lattice humanity had built over centuries, a web invisible even to the Council's surveillance. By the time the first investigation team arrived, the attackers had already disappeared into the void, leaving nothing but crippled fleets and terrified rumors. Panic spread faster than truth. Alien worlds blamed each other. Old rivalries reignited as accusations flew. The Council tried to maintain order, sending their most advanced fleets to suppress what they still believed were isolated revolts. Yet every ship that entered human-controlled sectors failed to report back. Command relays blinked out one by one. On the edges of known space, new signals appeared, encrypted, rhythmic, unmistakably human. The message was brief and merciless. Operation Dawnfire, active. For the first time in centuries, Earth's voice returned to the galactic grid. A transmission played across every captured relay. This is Terran Command. Humanity never surrendered. You taught us your systems, your codes, your weaknesses. We thank you for the education. The feed cut to silence, leaving entire worlds staring at static. Within days, orbital defense networks that had once guarded the Council's most secure planets fired upon their own ships. Industrial sectors erupted in coordinated explosions. Entire civilizations realized their infrastructure was no longer theirs. Alien commanders issued desperate orders, but their fleets no longer obeyed. Human crews had seized control of navigation systems, communication cores, and reactor protocols. On captured ships, the insignias of their former masters were erased, replaced by a single emblem, a fractured chain surrounding a blue sphere. Humanity's mark of reclamation. Every planet that once held human slaves now faced fleets bearing that symbol, broadcasting a single ultimatum: stand down or vanish. The Council's attempts to negotiate met silence. They had enslaved a species that had spent millennia mastering survival through adversity. Now, that endurance had turned into precision warfare. The galaxy watched in disbelief as human forces dismantled entire fleets without open battles. Orbital strikes hit only military targets, leaving civilian zones untouched, as if to prove humanity's control extended even to mercy. In 72 hours, 20 systems fell. In another 72, hundreds more followed. Human-controlled networks spread through the galactic web like veins of light cutting through darkness. For the first time, fear unified the galaxy, not of invasion, but of justice. The enslaved had become the architects of retribution. When the final wave of Council transmissions broke down into static, one voice replaced them all, calm and deliberate. We were your workers, your soldiers, your slaves. You thought you broke us. But every blow you struck only forged the weapon that now stands before you. This is not rebellion. This is the conclusion. The galaxy finally understood the cost of underestimating humanity. The age of silence was over. The architects of chains were now bound by their own creation, and the species they had voted to enslave had become the architects of their downfall. The Galactic Council convened for the last time beneath a sky choked with smoke. Panic rippled through the chamber once ruled by arrogance. The delegates, once proud and untouchable, now spoke in hushed tones, their voices trembling with disbelief. Every fleet they had sent had vanished, every colony was silent, every communication line either dead or echoing with human-coded signals. The vast empires that once enslaved Earth were collapsing, undone by the very laborers they had believed mindless. No one could comprehend how a species once broken had risen so swiftly and decisively. Reports flooded in, each worse than the last. Human fleets, built from captured ships and re-engineered weapons, were emerging from hyperspace in precise formations, striking with mathematical perfection. Entire defense networks shut down seconds before the attacks began, as if humanity already knew every access code. The Council's greatest admirals fell without even understanding the weapons being used against them. The Terran Vanguard, the Iron Will, and the Erebus spearheaded the offensive, each name whispered with a mixture of awe and dread. Planets surrendered before a single shot was fired, terrified by the promise of what followed refusal. From orbit, the human armada broadcast one unified message. You voted for our enslavement. You will now live by the world you created. There was no rage in the voice, only cold finality. The message spread across every system, reaching worlds that had never even seen a human. Panic turned to despair. The Council sent envoys, pleading for peace, promising reparations, begging for negotiation. No reply came. Humanity did not seek surrender. They sought closure. The galactic capital, once the symbol of universal power, became the center of judgment. Human ships darkened its skies, surrounding it with silent precision. Orbital shields that had stood for millennia fell within minutes. The city's defensive grid flickered and died, its control systems already rewritten by hidden human code. When the Terran ground divisions descended, no fanfare followed. They moved with discipline, efficient, silent, unstoppable. The aliens who had overseen humanity's oppression now trembled behind barricades, their authority evaporating in the shadow of their former slaves. Inside the shattered council hall, the once feared rulers were gathered, their jeweled robes torn, their crowns discarded. They pleaded, offering apologies and excuses, citing politics and fear. Humanity's representatives stood before them, clad in dark armor bearing no insignia, faces hidden behind mirrored visors. No words of anger were spoken. The lead envoy placed a data core on the council table, displaying records of every vote, every speech, every signed order that had justified Earth's enslavement. When the recordings ended, silence filled the chamber. Then a single statement echoed. Judgment is concluded. No executions were televised. There was no spectacle of vengeance. Instead, the ruling species found themselves confined to labor colonies under human supervision. They were forced to rebuild what their arrogance had destroyed, their every movement monitored by those they had once considered lesser beings. The irony was deliberate and absolute. Humanity had not merely defeated them, they had redefined the concept of control. Mercy was granted only to those who had aided the enslaved in secret, their survival seen as proof that compassion had once existed among the stars. Across the galaxy, images of the Council's downfall spread like wildfire. The same networks that had broadcast humanity's humiliation now transmitted its triumph. Every transmission ended with the same phrase. The chains are broken. Alien civilizations that had watched from the sidelines fell into silence. The era of domination had ended, replaced by a fear no weapon could erase, the understanding that humans could not be ruled, only respected. When the final report reached Earth, the message was short. The operation was complete, resistance minimal, objectives achieved. The galaxy had been brought to its knees not by fury, but by calculated inevitability. The Council's empires were ashes, and from those ashes, humanity rose, not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as arbiters ensuring no species would ever repeat the vote that once doomed them all. The war ended not with celebration but with silence. Across the stars, the fires faded, leaving only the quiet hum of human-controlled networks. The fleets that had shattered empires now orbited in formation, engines idle, weapons dormant. Humanity had won, yet there was no joy in their victory, only clarity. They had proven a truth the galaxy could never again forget: enslavement had consequences. The Terran Federation was formed from that truth, born not of ambition but necessity, to ensure no species would ever again wield chains. Human command rebuilt order with ruthless efficiency. Systems that once belonged to arrogant civilizations were placed under reconstruction mandates. No plunder, no revenge campaigns, no senseless cruelty. Every world that had participated in Earth's enslavement was placed under structured oversight. The defeated species were not exterminated, they were tasked with rebuilding the systems they had broken. Factories once filled with human slaves now rang with the sounds of alien labor, overseen by silent Terran officers. The galaxy that had once viewed humanity as primitive now saw them as architects of stability. The balance of power had shifted forever. Earth itself transformed into a symbol rather than a throne. Rebuilt from ruin, it became a memorial world, open to all species, yet ruled by none. Monuments rose from the scars of old battlefields, engraved with the names of every colony, every soul lost in captivity. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to see the planet they once condemned, now glowing like a blue beacon of judgment. Every visitor left with the same realization: humanity had not conquered for dominance, they had conquered to ensure survival. The Federation's policies were absolute. Slavery was outlawed across every inhabited system. Exploitation of lesser species became a capital offense. The few who defied these decrees vanished quietly, their fleets erased without trace. None dared question it. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when provoked. They ruled not through tyranny, but through the lingering fear of awakening their wrath again. That fear preserved peace better than any treaty ever written. Historians from alien worlds struggled to explain humanity's rise. They described them as paradoxes, compassionate executioners, merciful conquerors, destroyers who rebuilt what they tore down. One scholar from the Veth Collective wrote, "We once feared humans for their weapons. We now fear them for their restraint." Across the archives of countless civilizations, records were rewritten. The era once known as the Age of Unity became known instead as the Age of Remembrance. Under the Federation, trade routes reopened, star systems flourished, and communication networks linked worlds that had once been divided by fear. Humanity guided reconstruction with precision, demanding accountability but offering aid without prejudice. To many, this discipline was unnerving, to others, it was salvation. Even the most bitter of species eventually admitted that the galaxy under Terran watch was safer than it had ever been under the Council's rule. In the shadows of the new peace, humanity never disarmed. Fleets remained stationed in every quadrant, silent but vigilant. The Federation's creed was engraved in every command terminal, every military outpost, every diplomatic treaty. We remember what silence cost us. Generations born after the war grew up with that phrase as law, understanding that peace was not a gift but a responsibility. Years passed, and the Council's ruins became a museum. The very table where Earth's enslavement had been voted upon stood beneath glass, surrounded by the banners of every surviving species. A plaque below it read, "To forget is to invite repetition." Visitors rarely spoke inside the chamber. The weight of history was too heavy. When the Terran Broadcast Network marked the centennial of liberation, the transmission was simple. A single voice spoke without title or face, carried across every inhabited system. "We have rebuilt the galaxy not through fear, but through remembrance. We do not seek vengeance. We seek understanding. But if any among the stars ever again choose to raise chains, remember who broke them first." The message ended, and the stars remained silent. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. Humanity had no need to roar anymore, its memory was enough to keep the universe in order.